At the third Global Conference on Agriculture, Food and Nutrition Security and Climate Change, there are many visitors from all over the world, and none so much as Ernie Shea from the United States from Solutions from the Land. Ernie, welcome to South Africa, but first of all, what is Solutions from the Land?
Well, Tony, Solutions from the Land is a dialogue that's taking place in the United States that involves a group of agriculture, forestry, and conservation leaders who are talking about the future of their industries going forward. And it's a conversation about a bigger vision for agriculture and forestry, a conversation about the land being used not just to produce food and fiber, but a land base that produces those commodities, but also energy, clean water, clean air, wildlife habitat, biodiversity, solutions to climate change. So it's a conversation about how do we understand the new opportunities that exist for farmers and ranchers and create a pathway that they can be valued, recognized, and compensated for the full range of goods and services that are delivered from the land.
I have a bit of a statement I need to make now for you to answer the next question, which is, we are a young democracy of 20 years since the change of government took place in this region. We have aspirant, up-and-coming black farmers that need to come into the marketplace. However, you and I both know that you cannot take the land away that needs to be producing food for the populace of every country. That's applicable to every country in the world. How do we bring those aspirant farmers in and give them that knowledge you've just been telling me about with climate conditions, and who does that? And is government responsible for that, or is private enterprise responsible for it?
Tony, that's a complicated question, and I don't feel qualified to be the expert trying to advise South Africa in terms of how to integrate those, but I would suggest that it's not a black or white situation or an answer, meaning it's not one choice or the other. It's more of an all of the above. So when we in the United States work with the farming community, trying to deal with difficult challenges, whether it's the loss of farmland, the availability of farmland, whether it's environmental impacts from farming operations, we find it to be most productive to have a dialogue involving government and all of the value chain partners and stakeholders that have an interest, so that it's not just looking to the government for answers, but it's a conversation and a model, if you will, where we bring together around discussion tables the various stakeholders that have an interest in the outcome of a particular issue. And we work with them to help them sort through it and forge consensus on a path forward.
Essentially what you're saying, there has to be dialogue between all the parties concerned, and if there isn't, it's a recipe for a failure.
I think that's exactly right, because there's an old adage that we follow in the United States: what you're in on, you're not down on. So if you're not in on the conversation, understanding the issues, understanding the limitations or the possibilities, you're not going to be in a position to probably fully appreciate the recommendations that come out of those conversations or embrace the solutions that they are proposing.
How much does your government help you in the farming community?
We're very fortunate in the United States that the government recognizes agriculture as a critical industry that's responsible for a major part of the economy. We are a $1 trillion economy when you add up the agricultural and forestry assets of the United States. And it's an economy that is driven mostly through the private sector, but is very dependent upon support the government provides in the form of technical assistance, in the form of some financial support for conservation practices, some risk management support in terms of farm programs that need longer-term certainty and protection to avoid catastrophic losses. So there's a variety of ways that the government provides support. The research arena is one where public resources for agricultural research are a critical part of how we've been able to evolve and thrive. Yet all of these government contributions now are being scrutinized. And in the United States, we're entering a new era. And it's an era of contracting government resources. There are fewer public dollars available. So the lesson that we've learned is that you can't look to government for all the answers, that you've got to find new partnerships and forge coalitions with all of the players that have assets and resources that can be brought to the table. When you think about what it takes to operate a sustainable farming system, if you're just looking for the government to come in and help you farm and help you achieve success, you're not going to be around very long. You need to depend on the banks, the equipment companies, the seed companies, the farm managers, the rural appraisers, the crop consultants, the insurance industry. Anybody that touches the industry has a stake in its outcome, and that's where we get into this need for more multi-stakeholder collaborations where these different participants who share the risk, who share the outcomes, can participate in a conversation about the way forward for agriculture and forestry in the United States.
Let's talk about something you and I talked about before we came on camera, and that was the sandbox theory. I was quite fascinated with your analogy of using the sandbox.
Well, it in my mind, comes down to thinking about and organizing my own mind how various stakeholder communities, whether private businesses or nonprofit organizations or government agencies, coalesce and try to work through issues. And if you're very government-centric in thinking that everything is driven by the decisions of the Congress or the Parliament or whatever government body you're operating in, then you're probably migrating to the Capitol, where there is an ongoing battle, if you will, for ideas, for priorities, for leadership. And I think of it oftentimes as a sandbox. And
the power struggle in the sandbox.
Right. And to get into the sandbox, you have to have acquired a certain stature and status. And once you're in, then you're part of this master, ongoing game of how decisions are made. And what we've realized is that that is only part of the decision-making apparatus, and that increasingly the voices outside of the sandbox, the farmer, rancher, forestry, conservation leaders who make their living on the land, but perhaps are not aligned with any of these entities that are working inside the Capitol, have tremendous insight and vision and ideas that can contribute to a sustainable future for us, very much like a think tank. And what we do is try to create these ephemeral leadership teams where we bring together well-connected, highly respected leaders who have had decades worth of experience in their farming operations, in their forestry operations, and have probably, over the course of their careers, been in the sandbox, battling out in Washington or in a state capitol for a very narrow outcome. And they've learned that that battle, that chess game, is only so effective. It only typically gets you so far, and that the focus is often very short term. So we try to take a longer term view and get out of the battles of today and think about tomorrow. So we typically start with a vision of where do we want to be. In the energy arena, we've adopted, as an agricultural community, a goal that by the year 2025, 25% of the nation's energy will come from farms, ranches, and forests. And that was done not by government originally, it was done by farmer forestry leaders, creating a new vision for a future. And then we build momentum and a coalition to bring that about, and then introduce it into the sandbox and to policymakers. And oftentimes it's seen as a threat because it's something different.
Let's move on now to biofuels, because that's a big buzzword within the world. And you touched on it, you said energy will be coming from farmlands and areas like that. How important is it to keep in mind that you have to feed people and you cannot take from the food chain to produce biofuels?
Well, that's a very critical point. And when I talked about the goal that we've set of having 25% of our nation's energy come from farms, ranches, and forests by the year 2025, it's not just a goal about the energy production. The additional part of our vision is that that can be accomplished while simultaneously assuring the continued production of safe, affordable, and abundant food supplies for the country. So it's not a choice of food or fuel. Our vision is that with technology, with the creative abilities of farmers and ranchers all across the globe, that we're going to have the capacity to use the land to produce food, fuel, and other important ecosystem benefits at the same time. So it's about smart farming. It's about planning for multiple outcomes and not just striving for one particular objective.
To sort of finish this very interesting conversation, which we could sit here for hours talking about various aspects of the agricultural field, I'd like to say you've come to South Africa. You know very little about this country, which is acceptable and understandable. How would you see us going forward as friends across the ocean, extending hands to each other to help?
Well, I think we're certainly very humbled in realizing that we don't have all the answers, and that we've seen great examples of leadership here in South Africa and fresh ideas that we're prepared to take back and share with our leaders. And I think this idea of establishing a global dialogue around solutions from the land has tremendous opportunity and promise. Good ideas surface everywhere in the world. Farmers are innovators. They have experiences that may be unique to their farming operation in South Africa, but they may find that they're transferable to another part of the world. And similarly in the United States, we may have practices and approaches that might have value here. So establishing this dialogue around how we can manage land sustainably to meet what's coming. And what's coming is a world population of over 9.5 billion people by the year 2050. Many of them will be residents on the African continent. And we all have a shared responsibility of ensuring that their quality of life is better than ours today. And
can we look forward to solutions from the land, forging a steady, firm relationship in future with us?
We've talked about it in the United States, and I think we are very open and receptive to integrating our work into the work of others. And if a global platform for a Solutions from the Land dialogue is something that would have value, we'd be very happy to support it and participate in it.